Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on the six key things that successful market and competitive intelligence platforms have in common. This webinar is hosted by M&CI, which provides competitive and market intelligence solutions to the customers worldwide to help them turn data into insights so they can make better business decisions. The presenter today is Christian Bierser, who is the CEO of M&CI Inc. I am now handing over the control to Christian, who will take it from here. Christian?
Thank you so much, Maleka. It's great to be here. It's great to see so many people joining at what I hope is going to be a very interesting subject. Today, we're going to talk about the six key things that successful market and competitive intelligence platforms have in common. But before you actually do that, oh, sorry, this one moved a little fast. Before we actually do that, I think we need to discuss a little bit about what a M&CI platform actually is. Because otherwise it will be hard to put some success factors attached to it. So let's start with that one. This is a slide that we used together with a webinar series that we did with Skip, and it was a very interesting series. We accumulated some data during that series that I'm going to present as we move forward. But the first thing we had to do was to kind of establish what it is we're talking about here. What is a market and competitive intelligence system? And there are different systems out there today that operate slightly differently. But a complete CI system has to have certain components. And we talk about four of these. We talk about the media monitoring. We talk about the intelligence management, the trend radar or analytics capabilities, and then the insight generation. And this has also have to be put in some sort of automation context. So we've kind of stuck to the definition of a digital platforms that automates market and competitive intelligence work, mainly going into the collection and classification of both internal and external information relating to your business environment, to your competitive landscape. We talk about the ability to be notified, to be expanding that notification, not only to include news, but also to other types of searches and curated content. CI is more than just a news service. It's more than Google News. So a CI system needs to relate to that as well. And in that kind of media monitoring landscape, you find the foundation of how you then analyze that information. So you got to have the ability to discover new insights, to have a system that helps you, pointing you in the right direction when it comes to identifying coming trends, threats, opportunities, etc. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that specific part when we move into the case studies that I'm going to present a little bit later on during this webinar. And then, of course, you have the ability, or you have to have the ability to collaborate, to communicate effectively and share that insight that you got through dashboards, alerts, templates, reports. So this is kind of a high-level idea of what a market and competitive intelligence system is and what it needs to contain. Now, if it doesn't contain all of these parts, it's not a complete CI system, but it's what we call a niche system. And niche systems, there are plenty of them around. I mean, you could even view Google Alerts or Google News as a niche CI system, only focusing on media monitoring. You could have a system to create battle cards that only focus on the battle cards, which then becomes what we call a niche system because it lacks the other parts that are needed. And how does this then work? What is the difference between implementing a complete competitive intelligence system versus niche systems? I think this image sums it up pretty good. There are always going to be different parts of your need that are not going to be handled through even a complete CI system. For example, the CI system is not a replacement for your CRM system. It's not a replacement for your business intelligence systems, your Tableau and Dynamics and all of those kind of other systems that exist in their own right. But they can relate to them. So we can hook up to your business intelligence system. We can hook up to your SharePoints. We can hook up to your CRM systems. But all the other things, the intelligence management, the insight generation, the trend radar, the media monitoring, that is already inside the CI system. On the right side here is more the niche approach. So you could have you could argue that I have a content provider that provides me with a lot of competitive intelligence information and a lot of features relating to their content. And then that will become a niche CI system for me. We could have like a sales intelligence system. We talked about the battle cards that exists separately then. And then you have another content provider that provides you with additional good information. So very quickly you get this patchwork of different systems that you need to maintain and keep within your ecosystem to have the capabilities that you want from a CI system standpoint. So this is not what we are looking at in this presentation. We're looking at the complete CI system. So the success factors that I'm going to be talking about, they all relate to a system that can be defined on the left side of the screen, not to the right. And then the overall purpose of a CI system is actually quite simple. It can be described in this: grunt work versus great work. With the abundance of information that we have these days, it's so easy to get stuck in an information research role where you're constantly hunting for new clues, new information. And the problem with that is that when you do that, you spend less time actually analyzing and understanding the information that's in front of you, or the data that's in front of you. And a good CI system automates to a high degree that information research process, and thus it frees up time for you to work on the analysis and the insight side of the equation. So where we're looking at, not, of course, eliminating the research side, that's not going to be possible. We seek to minimize it. So instead of putting like 80% of your time hunting for clues and information and desperately trying to put those together in an analysis with the remaining 20% of your time, we're instead looking at switching that. So having a system that automates what you hunt for in your research, and allowing you to instead put 80% of your time into the analysis and insights generation. Still going to need to do some research, but let's keep it at 20%. We're hopefully even lower. So this is the general idea behind the CI system. It's a system designed to basically help you. It's a system that should be augmenting your capabilities as an analyst and doing all that heavy lifting on the side. When we talk to our customers, we generally when we talk about customers getting their feedback on how the situation was before implementing a system, when we are out doing presentations and seminars and webinars on these topics, we kind of always try to get some information from our audience. And one thing that we like to do are these kind of Mentimeter questions. And I'm going to throw this screen at you and just showing you a typical, from one of our recent gatherings, where the audience basically can tell you quickly, what are your 3 main challenges in using market and competitive intelligence tools and technologies today? And I think that if you look at this, you're going to see that it's definitely recognizable for most of us. You have your scaling, you have your cost, the communication, gauging user engagement, how to sync with other systems, all of these kind of things, the noise. How do we get rid of that? So looking at these, doing these things, they are uncannily alike wherever you go, whatever webinar you do, whatever seminar you do. They're always kind of boiling down to these same things. And out of challenges, there are also, of course, solutions, and there are success factors that will help you to negotiate these obstacles. And that's the thing we're going to be focusing the rest of the webinar on. We're going to focus on these success factors. And it's not rocket science, but sometimes it's really good to get them down on a piece of paper or on the screen in front of you to see what they actually relate to. So here they are in all their glory, the 6 success factors. I'm not even going to bring them out one by one. I'm just going to do it like this. So when we look at the most successful implementations, and we've been doing this since the late 90s, we can see that there are some clear things that you need to have in place and you need to have an understanding about to actually be very successful. And successfully, of course, which we will come to later on, can be measured in different ways. But where a system has clear recognition as being very successful and very important to the company that runs it. So the first thing is actually relating back to what I just talked about. Having the understanding that they need a CI, a market and competitive intelligence platform. I'm going to probably use the CI platform because it's much shorter to say than market and competitive intelligence. But of course, we mean the same thing. So the need first, the understanding of what it is and the reason why we need it. So here's where you come in, also understanding the difference between the complete solution and the niche solution. That is sort of at the foundation of understanding. And the purpose, if you look at a system like I've described, it is a very, very versatile system. You are basically talking about getting information from a lot of sources, automatically handling it, manage it effectively, derive analysis from it, and create insights. But what are your purpose? You have to understand that very clearly. Is it, and that's what we're going to go through in the cases that we're going to talk about in a while. It's not just a thing that should be nice to have. It's something that with a clear purpose of serving. And what kind of need should the platform serve? Because it can serve a variety of needs, and an astoundingly flexible an amount of needs can be handled through it. So that is the foundation on that understanding. And then we talk about the ITPs. The ITPs are at the core of every system. It is the information, it's the technology, and it is the people. And the technology kind of gets a lot in focus here. You look at the awesome things a system can do, for example, with AI these days. But what you kind of forget sometimes on that is that there are other factors in this as well. No AI can work without a flow of information that is relevant. If you attach an AI to an irrelevant flow of information, you're going to get an irrelevant output as well. So the information side, the content side, the data side is very important. What goes into that system? What does the technology have to work with? And sometimes this is an easy fix. The information is readily available, and sometimes it's not. And you have to spend more time on understanding what it is you need and what it is you actually want. And we see a lot of cases where we have customers that have a huge amount of information coming into their system. But once you systemize it, once you see those flows, you see that you have a lot of information about exactly the same things. So the information are not duplicated in a way that they are exact duplicates of each other, but they're duplicated in their focus. So how many versions of a news article do you need? It's not the same article, but it's the same reporting on the same event. Sometimes that can be important, but for most of the people that we work with, it's not. It's the fact that something happened that is important. So that is an example of how you create your own information overflow. Systems are great at solving that, taking charge of that situation. And then you can focus on getting that information that's not very readily available, and maybe where you need to do a primary research project to get an understanding of some things. So information is very, very important when it comes to getting the technology to operate appropriately. And of course, people. Now, people are needed on so many levels. There's no system where you can push a button and it will release the strategy for your company for the next 5 years. That kind of insight requires people. But it's not only in the interpretation and the insight creation where you need this. It's also in all the flows of intelligence that goes around in a company, making sure that you can engage the right people. You can provide the right people the right information at the right time. So that kind of combination where the system is fueled by relevant information, by engaging good people in the process, that augments technology, and technology will perform in a superior way than if we were just relying on a standalone machine in the corner of the room. So all of these things, information, technology, people, need to be in place if you want to have a successful competitive intelligence system. The third one dives a little bit deeper into information. So like I touched on, the control of information is paramount. Today, you can literally drown yourself in millions and millions of alerts coming from various sources. But you got to prioritize quality over quantity here. And unfortunately, quality usually comes with a price tag. But it's worth it. We see in our most successful systems a careful selection of information, external information sources. Some of them are expensive, some of them are not, some of them are free, but you have to be in control of this selection. And if the more that's free for you out there, the better it is, of course. But you are probably going to end up somewhere where you have to acquire information, quality information at a price, because good information is generally not freely available. But the impact of this is huge, because again, to my example of the AI, unleashing an AI to identify trends on quality information, that is something completely different. That is a completely new level of AI-assisted analysis. So that part of the puzzle is very important. And when you have that external information flow going, that is good, is solid, it generally becomes easier with point 4. Involved users and encouraged sharing of internal information. This is probably one of the factors that is raised the most. How do we get our users to get engaged with the system? And how do we get to share the internal information? There are many ways of doing it, but just a quick one is basically to create an environment where you can provide something of interest to your users. It's so basic, and that basically comes down many times to number 3, the external information sources and that general flow of information, or anything internal that can be added to that can be automated. So looking at that also creates more user engagement. And user engagement, again, is a key success factor. And the 5th one is, how do we position the market and competitive intelligence system in relation to other platforms, other systems? When you act inside a company, there's an ecosystem of different solutions with different purposes. The very, very interesting thing about competitive intelligence systems is that they relate to a lot of these systems in one way or the other. Let's take a CRM system, for example. How do we, as a competitive intelligence system, effectively engage with a CRM system? There are 3 ways. We can retrieve information from that CRM system. What we do there is kind of basic CI work. There are sales reps, they write notes, they put them in there. There can be golden nuggets of competitive intelligence information if we could just get to it. Well, the CI system could kind of easily automate that retrieval for you. So that's basically, we are getting information, we're retrieving information out of that competitive intelligence, that CRM system. But then the other way, we can also enrich the CRM system from the competitive intelligence systems. So that same sales guy that wrote the note that was the golden nuggets for us can get an analysis of a competitor or customer pushed to the CRM system that he then is armed with when he goes into a negotiation or he goes in to do a sales pitch. So then again, we are a provider of information in that case to the CRM system. And when this actually works the best is when you see the hybrid, or sort of the two-way communication. We're feeding the system with data, with intelligence, and we're receiving market signals out of the CRM system, for example. So the contextualization, or the context of the market and competitive intelligence systems and how it relates to all these other important internal systems is very, very important, because when you get this structure going, it provides tremendous visibility for intelligence within your company. A lot of these things become more tangible and easier to measure. So a very important part is how to work with those internal systems, other systems that you have internally in your company. And the final one is basically, well, how do we do this? How do we measure and show value? This is a hard part. Many think it is, because how do you measure the value of intelligence? There's been books written about this, and articles and webinars and seminars. And always when you have that kind of discussion, it's not a clear-cut case on how to measure and show value. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes that sales guy will come up to you and say, yeah, I won the deal thanks to the intelligence that you provided to me. And other times it will be much harder to actually do. How do you measure a deal that was never entered into due to intelligence coming from the intelligence group in the company that decided that when we decided not to pursue that deal? So that is a bit more difficult, but you have to do it. You have to find measure points, KPIs, to do just that, to show value. We have a lot of experience in this as well, so we're happy to help if you want some ideas, but it requires a completely separate webinar. So that being said, we got our 6 key things that we need to consider when we look at the successful implementations of market and competitive intelligence platforms. So now we're going to take a look at a couple of cases. They are anonymous cases. I'm going to talk about them, but they're real customers, and they're current customers of ours, and we'll go through them one by one. And the first I would like to start with is the one I call the lab company. This is a very, very interesting case because it's so operative. It is operative on a level that is kind of rare. I mean, there are other similar cases, but this one is so clear-cut, operational, and laser-focused on just one thing. So this lab company works in creating lab tests, basically, and we all know that, or we all have the unfortunate benefit of being sort of part of that entire target group during the last years with the pandemic. So basically, finding all of these COVID tests and these things, if you consider how that market looks like, it's huge, but it's extremely it's constantly moving. So it moves basically with viruses, it moves basically with outbreaks, but where is the next outbreak going to be? So where are we going to send our focus with this huge market and our limited sales resource capacity? Where do we send our reps? Where do we focus? So the need was here to basically find out where is the next outbreak likely to happen when it comes to certain diseases. And what the intelligence community in this company had identified were some indicators that were kind of freely available in the news media and in like public records, that certain things start to move in a certain direction. There's a very high likelihood that there's going to be a demand for our product in this specific geographical area. The problem was, how do we manage all that data and all that information in a way that we can do it before the fact rather than after the fact? So by using intelligence today, we set up a highly automated and very focused gathering of information from specific sources. Again, coming down to what type of sources are we looking at here? And the system, of course, can process this in a much faster way than humans can, and then allowing the analytical support tools to work on those data sets actually yielded a high success rate of finding out where the likelihood for a good deal for this company were to appear. So this is highly actionable, and this one you don't really need to produce any additional KPIs for. It's basically look at the bottom line of the company, the success of sales in this case, because if we identify the right market, there's going to be a demand, and they are going to be able to sell their product. So a nice example of a very, very focused competitive intelligence solution. For many companies, and I know a lot of the companies that are on this call, this kind of application might only be a part of your CI system, because this is very operative. It has no direct strategic components, but it could give you an insight in what you could actually do on an operational level with your CI system. And again, it requires, to do such a thing, requires the completeness of a complete CI system, because there are many parts here that needs to act together. The input of information, the intelligence management, getting that in a structured order so that the analytical support tools can work on it and then easily get that information out to the appropriate decision maker to basically make the decision, where do I send my reps? If we then move to another company that works on also kind of in the same sector, but with a completely different focus. This is a pharmaceutical company, and it has a slightly similar similarities to the lab company, in that it's very focused on the field, but there the similarities ends. So this company works with a lot with field intelligence, as is common in the pharmaceutical industry. But I have to explain a little bit about what I mean by field intelligence here. The pharmaceutical industry relies a lot on events where there are presentations of findings. abstracts are presented there that's not presented anywhere else, or at least not in that early stage. So if I want to know what my competitor is doing in developing a certain drug, it is likely that one of these events, seminars, conferences, is going to show me that information, at least to a certain extent, because that's when their scientists go up on stage, they show how far they've gotten in the process, they talk about all these things. And these are huge events. They're many of them, and they're highly time-consuming from an intelligence perspective. Because what you need to do is you've got to send people there, because the data is not available until it's shown on stage. So you go to this event with a quite large group of intelligence operatives that are tasked with finding this information. And a lot of it works in the way that you basically take pictures of what's being presented, bring that back to debrief, read all through those, or go through all of these pictures that you took, write a report, and send that along. This is a process that can go on for weeks or even months in sort of a debrief part of after one of these conferences. And the stakes here are high. They are very high, because a lot of investment decisions go in and are based on these intelligence reports. Because if a competitor is so far ahead of us in one of our initiatives, we might kill that instead of putting millions and even billions of dollars into continuous research. So stakes here are very, very high. And of course, when the stakes are that high, you want to get that process as effective as possible, and you want that information to reach the appropriate people a bit faster than a couple of weeks or a month. So what did they do? Well, intelligence today has a component that's called FIRE. FIRE is a intelligent OCR function, which basically means that you can snap a picture of anything. It's immediately uploaded to the intelligence system and interpreted, not just OCR'd. That's an important part of it, turning these images into text. But that text is also analyzed. It is matched to our taxonomy. Our AI functions will go through it so it understand what it says. What is this about? And when we understand, again, intelligence management, when we understand what this is, we also understand who needs it. Because in a good intelligence system, you will go to and say, this is what I need to be continuously informed about. So if something happens in this area, I need to know it. So the system knows this. Intelligence today knows that this piece of this abstract that we just caught with our operatives on the ground at this conference is going to be interesting for the following people in the company. And instead of having this report sent out a month later or a couple of weeks later, minutes or even seconds after that picture was snapped on the conference floor, an alert goes out and that person or persons are notified that this is going on. So again, moving away from just hunting that information and making that heavy lifting go faster can yield a lot of results. So again, we're seeing a company that has a clear-cut understanding of what is the pain point here? What is it we need the intelligence system to do for us? And then making sure that we deliver on that. So a hugely huge time saving, huge resource saving on that part, but in the end, also a much happier community of intelligence consumers that don't have to wait for that report for a month. They get it instantly. It's almost like they're there on the floor with the operatives. So the third example that I want to move out, and I'm going to move out of the pharma and the labs and all of that, and move into tech. So I'm going to talk about a financial fintech company, which has this is actually an interesting one because, like I said, we have a couple of these that share this particular, and I think it's a pretty common work situation. So I like to call it the small team, the big audience. I mean, a lot of CI teams, a lot of CI workers out there, practitioners face this. Yes, here's your team. This is what you're going to do. You're going to serve everyone. Management's important, but everyone else is also important. So the audience is huge. You're in tech, so you have a very mobile workforce. They're on the latest and greatest of tools, but that, as big as an opportunity that is, it's also a challenge. How do we reach them? How do we engage them? So what did they do? I mean, they had an understanding of the intelligence needs, and they had the understanding of the systems needs. So all of those things were fine. But the people, so how do we reach the people? And the first step they did was analyzing the communication patterns within the company. And it very quickly, they established that where people were engaging were not on email, they were not on the SharePoint sites. Everyone worked in Teams, Microsoft Teams. That was kind of the common denominator of all of these, of this entire company. It had a Teams culture, basically. A young tech company where your kind of lifeline to everything is through Teams. And again, this is how do you relate to and understand how your CI system relates to your different internal systems. So in this case, Teams became a very, very important part of the competitive intelligence ecosystem. So what we had to do, and what Intelligence Today had to do, was to integrate with Teams and SharePoint, both to get, again, like I described previously, get our hands on that intelligence and those golden nuggets of information that flows around these communication platforms at a daily basis, but also to ensure that we can push the intelligence that is needed into the organization through their preferred method of communication, which in this case was Teams. So I think this one, like I said, we have a couple of examples of this, which is interesting because I think that Teams, Slack, and all of those communication applications, we're seeing a little bit of email has been for so long a so dominant player, but it's getting challenged now. And the competitive intelligence systems out there need to relate to this, and there needs to be a focus on how to, excuse me, how to integrate them into the intelligence landscape of solutions. So this would be the way that this small team easily reach this big audience. It's interesting to see. It's all of these three cases I talked about, they are different in many ways, but they also share a lot of commonalities that we have on this list of 6 key things that makes up a complete CI system, and a successful one to that matter. I hope that this has been a little bit inspiring to you on these 3 cases. But I would like, before we go into the Q&A, that have some final words. We like this garden approach. I should have put in a little picture from the book that my dear colleague Jesper Martell wrote together with Gabriel Anderbjörk. But I forgot. We can probably send you a link. Maleka can probably send you a link to this, but that's a great book when it talks about how you achieve this. We talked about the 6 things that you have to have for a complete CI and a successful CI system. But how do you get there? And the book talks about this in quite extensive terms. But there are a couple of things that I just want to touch on. There's implementing a CI system is not a big bang. It will not happen overnight. It will not be using the magic AI robots. It's a process, and it needs dedication. But at the end, the rewards can be very, very substantial once you get that to work. But you don't have to do everything at once. You go step by step. So depending on where you are currently, you basically start with your seeds, and eventually you move from one step to the other until you have that blooming garden, in kind of those examples that I showed you. Sometimes it will take more time, sometimes it will go faster. But there is no point in jumping ahead unless you have the foundation in place. That will not work. So with that, we have a couple of more minutes for, I hope you found it interesting, but let's see if there's any questions, and hopefully I will be able to provide some answers to that as well. So Maleka,
yes,
over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christian, for this insightful and informative presentation. Let's see if we have a question here. Okay, I have one that says, I can share my screen.
Do you want me to stop sharing, maybe?
Yes, please.
Oh, you did the override. Perfect.
So I have a question that says, a good CI system is dependent on internal team involvement, as you mentioned. What is your best tip on getting people involved?
Well, again, that's the question that always gets brought up. Excuse me. And of course, it depends on the company. But one thing I can say that is super generic. It goes back to any sales tactic that you ever encountered. And it is, if you want someone to engage, if you want something from someone, you have to give them something. Imagine when you are at the grocery store and they give out free samples of cheese or whatever it is, and they want you to try it. They're not doing that because they think you're hungry and you want to get fed. They need to feed you. They do that because they understand that once you get something, you also are much more inclined to give something. In that case, buy something from them. So engagement comes down to the first step of engagement is to provide something for the audience that you want to engage. And usually in a classic way of setting a CI system up, is that you focus on the external because that is easier, and that's where the low-hanging fruit is to provide something. So if I can solve one of my colleagues' day-to-day information need in a very highly effective manner, it's much easier for me to come to him later and say, look, can I get your insights on this? You have a better relation. So at least at the very basic level, that is where you need to start.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I have another question that says the 6 key points that you shared, are they all as important? Are they?
Good question.
Yeah.
I think it's they're all important, but there might be difference sort of in importance from sort of depending on your perspective of the and your need. There can of course be different priorities, but I mean to understand the concept that is kind of basic. If you don't have an understanding, you're going to fail. The right combination is also of course very very important. But for example, if you don't have to engage with other systems, I mean, if that is not something that you need to do to solve the need of your companies, then of course point 5 will become kind of less important in that sense. But and also of course but it depends. But yes, I would say there can be differences, but there is importance in all of them. But you might need to weigh them a little bit.
Yes, thank you. And then we have another one. At what point should a team implement a Cimi platform?
I think, and here's the thing, because now I want to go back to that last picture from Jesper's book with the garden. And the thing is, I think as early as possible, because it's a step-by-step process. And if you have to start somewhere, and I don't see anywhere now that there's a intelligence function that can live completely without some sort of technology support. The important thing here is that you focus on where you are now and what you want to solve, but you don't lose track of where you might be going. Because again, I want to raise a finger of warning here for the niche system trap. When you only look at your current needs that there seem to be a quick and easy fix for, take a step back and consider, well, what happens in step 2 when this scales, when we become bigger, when we need more information, when we need to integrate something internally. Can this solution handle it? That will save you a lot of time, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears down the road. And again, think about the completeness of the CI system. Even if you don't start out using every feature and function initially, you are bound to get there at one point. So as early as possible, and keep your focus on what you need right now, but don't forget what you might need tomorrow.
Yes, thank you so much. And that was all the questions we had for now. We want to thank you all for being here with us today and hope you enjoyed this webinar. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to the email address here on the screen. Many thanks and hope to see you again soon.